Hello, Facebook Live. This is Gary from Greenpeace. I'm here with Sam from iFixit, and we are here today to talk about your devices. Are they repairable or are they not? And as you may have seen, you're here today that Greenpeace and iFixit released a report this past week ranking about just over 40 of the best-selling devices of tablets, PCs, and laptops, and we're going to basically take time today to walk you through some of our findings in really concrete terms, talking to experts in the field about how devices are designed, which ones are designed well for repairability, and which ones aren't. But quick introductions. My name is Gary. I work for Greenpeace on the Rethink IT campaign. Live in California, and we are here in iFixit's world headquarters in Southern California, the epicenter of the self-repair sector, and have Sam here. And Sam, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Sam Leinhardt. I'm the Lead Teardown Engineer at iFixit. So that means I'm in charge of all the teardowns you guys see. Also, we make a ton of repair guides for consumer electronics. All that is available for free online. And that's for any consumer to help replace their battery or their screen on their laptop or their phone. So this is really kind of our niche. We do those teardowns to assess the repairability and let people know which devices are going to be more long-lasting. We also do a lot of repair advocacy that will kind of give consumers the right to repair their devices despite what John Deere or what other manufacturers want you to do with their devices.
Great. I've been looking for this all week long, actually all month long, because I'm a bit of a repair geek myself. I'm just certainly not an expert, but I like to tinker with things. And here we have, the tools and the experts to talk about how we actually do this. And I've actually brought my iPad, old iPad 2 that I managed to very cleverly sit on a couple years ago and have this cracked screen. So when we get done today, I'm going to have Sam help me figure out how to actually get this back in full good nick. Sam, how did you get started doing this?
So originally, after I graduated from college, I had a graphic communications degree, which meant that I can do a lot of good things with pictures. So I was actually doing photo retouching for a medical supply company whose cash cow was breast implants. And that was kind of like a less fun outlook on the world, where we're kind of selling this like materialistic, kind of strange product, and had a friend who was working up at iFixit, and they were doing amazing things, saving the world and talking about making things more sustainable. And turns out that I could edit those pictures as well. So I ended up being kind of the main photography and photo editing person for the teardowns and repair guides at iFixit, and I've been here for 4.5 years now. And now I'm kind of in charge, which is cool.
That's great. So yeah, super excited to have the opportunity to work with Sam and iFixit. We're actually doing, Kyle, head of iFixit, we're working with our colleagues in Asia, doing events there. So there's a big push this week to try to get more attention to the importance of having our devices that are designed for repairability. And why is that important for Greenpeace? We certainly look at, we've been trying to be a positive catalyst in the IT sector to improve their environmental performance, make products that are designed for the planet we live on, and certainly repair is really critical. I mean, certainly we've had some success in getting companies like Apple and others to eliminate hazardous chemicals from their products with the help of our supporters putting pressure on the company to do better. We've seen that they've risen to the challenge before. We're really here to try to do that again to the sector as a whole, because we see a trend, unfortunately, where a lot of devices, especially as they're getting smaller and more complex, really hard to repair. And if we're to avoid, because right now we have a huge problem with electronic waste. It's a big part of it. So you have all this e-waste, you have collecting all over the world, and big part of that as well, people, and you may have been one of these people yourselves at times, like your device cracks, the battery dies, and you're like, well, I don't know how to repair it. I don't know exactly where to go.
And it's like 2 days out of warranty, right? So,
right.
So
and so it gets up really expensive. It's like, well, I'll just buy a new one. I'll stick it in the drawer at first, or maybe you try to probably you're recycling to get e-waste recycler, but this ends up going somewhere, and this is a big problem. Another big problem is it's a huge amount of resources that are going into our devices. You think of all the mining and all the labor and all the energy that goes into making these things. This is a huge investment of the Earth's resources. We really need to make sure they last as long as possible. So repair is a big focus for us this year, really trying to challenge the sector and the big companies who are making our devices to set this as a priority. And so we partnered with iFixit, really wanted to work with some of the leaders in this field, and did this report we just put out this past week. So if you go to www.rethink-it.org, you will have seen the report. Gives you really a sampling of some of the bigger brands and the smartphones, tablets, and laptops who did well, which were good to repair and which are really a problem. So we're going to basically spend some time today to just walk you through and also get your questions. So be thinking of what questions you have for Sam in particular about how to get your device repaired or what you should be looking for in purchasing your device. We have the website is one resource. We'll sort of highlight some other resources at the end and some other things you can do. But use your Facebook Live input. We want some questions from you. So keep them coming. We'll sort of go back and forth between looking at the devices and then taking your questions. So we're going to start with laptops. And I have actually here my own laptop that I used for many years. This is a 2010 MacBook Pro. You wrote all the guide to the Green Internet reports for many, many years. It still work. Actually, I had to switch for a while because the battery died and it cracked the trackpad, and I had to actually kind of expand it on me. Anyway, I got some parts from iFixit, kept it going. I've otherwise replaced the CD-ROM drive, did it myself, looked online, got some information from iFixit and others, and replaced the trackpad, got it all going. Works great. So this is the 2010-2011 series MacBook Pro. What about the new MacBooks?
So yeah, this one you can see is significantly thinner. And I mean, even back in the day in 2010, 2011, that's still like a pretty thin laptop, but we're going really hard on the design anorexia here. This is actually a 2017 Retina MacBook. So this is kind of like the new wave MacBook that's kind of replacing the Air and the like less elite version of the MacBook Pro these days. First thing you'd immediately notice is that we've got proprietary screws in here. So these are Apple's famous Penelope 5-pointed screws, which they basically invented. They'd been used before in other devices, but not to any kind of like large scale like Apple devices.
So what's a Penelope screw again?
So yeah, a Penelope screw is a 5-lobed security screw. It's basically designed to keep people out because no one has a 5-pointed screw until we actually had to design
you don't have it in your toolbox already.
Right. So for example, your 2010 over there, that's just got small Phillips screws in the bottom. So if you've got eyeglasses, if you've got any kind of like small screwdriver, you can just like super open that up. Anyone has one in their drawer. Not so for this one. This is going to be a very specific tool that you'll have to buy separately. Which is silly because as soon as you actually open the thing up, then of course like none of those screws are used after that. Because inside, that's where the service techs are. So you just have this kind of lock on the door before you're able to get in. And then after that, then it's like, okay, this is standard machinery in here. So I'll just go ahead and pop open this back.
So is there no functional reason for having these particular screws?
Oh yeah, no, these are 100% for security. These actually aren't very great screws. If you try to like remove and replace them, there's a high likelihood that you'll actually strip these screws because it's a pretty shallow screw actually compared to like a flathead or a Phillips, or a Torx is really good actually about balancing the kind of force. It's usually better than Phillips for not stripping. But these guys are very shallow. The screwdriver can slip out of it really easily. And if you'll notice, I'm kind of at an angle here. All of these screws are kind of at an angle, which is like an extra challenge of getting the driver in properly.
And so as you're doing this, talk to us a bit about what you're looking for in terms of a device that is designed for repair.
So screws are actually a good sign. Proprietary screws, not so much. But screws are much easier to get into than adhesive, for example. So if I may fast forward, we've got this guy is just a completely clean obelisk, like how are we supposed to get into this? It's actually sealed with adhesive, so that makes it extra challenging. At least with screws, you can remove and replace them for the most part. Adhesive, you usually have to go ahead and buy more adhesive after scraping this out. So the first fun thing is that there's so many cables in here holding these two pieces together. Because you'll notice we've got like half of the laptop is over here and half of the laptop is here. Whereas the 2010, it's purely just a back case. The back case
I can
pops
just take
right
it off.
And it's super easy to access. So I'm gonna reach in here,
Hold it.
disconnect some ZIF connectors here. All right, so there's one. We've got some other connectors here. It's just like a nightmare, I tell you what.
So how do you can just pull those out, or what's the?
Yeah, so once we have this open, I guess I'll just like leave this here because we don't actually need to disconnect these right away. But when I'm looking at a device, that's an instant sign of like, okay, this isn't meant just to be popped open, because we've kind of got these like traps in here. Like if you tried to open it up immediately, you might rip the trackpad ribbon cable here, you might pull the connector off the board. So that's obviously like this requires specialized knowledge, which is why repair guides are so important. People like Apple don't post their repair guides online. That's only for service techs. But HP, for example, the HP Elite book, really great. You just pop off the back. Everything is immediately accessible just on one panel, and then just standardized screws throughout, and you've got a repair manual to walk you through it.
Right. So my MacBook, I could I could take out the memory and put in some bigger, more memories to make it go faster.
Yeah.
And I could put in my own solid state hard drive.
Right.
What about in this one?
Yeah, if you'll notice, that's all the logic board is, just this tiny little piece right here. There's no removable RAM, there's no removable SSD, there's not even a wireless card in here that you can plug up and undo.
So if you want to upgrade, what can you do?
You buy a new computer. That's kind of the Apple business model nowadays. Is okay, you've got 2 years of the support, and once this starts slowing down, then like okay, that's it, pretty much. You can try and replace the battery. It's like really heftily glued in here. It's actually kind of got a tiered battery design, which Apple was very excited about because, it takes up the maximum space inside the case, but it also allows for the maximum amount of adhesive in there. So this is really dangerous to remove. You've got to remove everything else basically before you can get to the battery. So as you can see here, it's pinched underneath the logic board right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you needed to replace the battery, you have this computer, what would your options be?
I mean, it's definitely something that you can do with a lot of patience if you can source the part, which is another struggle because Apple doesn't provide replacement parts or any option to buy those. So I'd probably recommend going on eBay or on Craigslist and trying to find a busted screen on one of these laptops or something that it's a newer device, so it has an okay battery, and then you might be able to do that swap. But basically, you just need to apply heat carefully. You can use an eye opener, for example, or a blow dryer to kind of warm this up. It's a gel formulation that we have where you can just microwave this in any microwave oven, and it gets it warm enough that you can warm the adhesive. And when you warm adhesive, that kind of makes it stretchier. So you're more able to pry that out. And then a heat gun is a little more dangerous because it gets a little hotter, and you don't want to expose batteries to too much heat. Because there's kind of funky chemistry in there. And then it just requires a ton of prying, and you've got weird like case things in here where your prying options are pretty limited. But then after that, then you'll have a new battery, and it'll last you another 2 years before that starts to degrade again, and then you have to do the process all over again.
Yeah, so this one I was able to, it had a pull tab, I could pop the battery out, I bought another battery, put it in there, and it was basically worked as good as new.
Yeah. And for many laptops, that was absolutely the norm. I mean, if you think about like your first PC laptop, you didn't even have to take it apart. There was just a latch and you slid the battery off, right? And then you could pop that back in. That was also the case with Android phones or any phone really back in the day. You just like peeled off the rear cover and you could take the battery out, and that's just not a thing anymore. Everything's built in, and it's irresponsible because these batteries are dangerous. So if you decide, well, like I don't actually want to repair this, I'm going to give this to an e-recycler, they have to take this battery out before they can do anything. They can't harvest the parts, they can't shred it or recycle it without removing that a little explosive.
Right. So super important point. So it's not. So the design chosen here, unfortunately, is not only does it make it difficult to repair, it makes it really difficult to disassemble for recycling.
Right.
And reuse of the resources.
Yeah.
So. So Apple didn't score very well with this particular MacBook. Who were the better performance in laptops, and why did you find them to be more repairable?
Right. So historically, HP has been a very good performer in the laptop industry still. So as I said, with the EliteBook, that was another one we did an assessment for. The rear case just has a few screws. You pop that out. Everything is laid out in front of you. You've got the motherboard that has immediately accessible RAM and SSD cards that can just be pulled out and swapped. So for an upgrade, that's like super easy. For the battery, I think there were only like 2 screws that you just like unscrew those 2 screws,
right.
You pull it out and put a new battery in. And like as soon as you do those couple little upgrades and repairs, then like boom, that's it. You've got a new laptop for another, few years. So that's something we really like to see is that lack of proprietary screws, the kind of flat design where everything is accessible, especially the high wear components like a display or a battery, because those are going to be more likely to wear out. And then the upgradable components, which are the storage, so the SSD or the hard drive, and then also the RAM memory. And there's also things like Wi-Fi cards that are also useful to a lesser degree. So those are kind
Sounds
of good
really
hallmarks.
familiar with what I had with this machine.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. That used to be the standard, and that's how laptops were made. And now we've kind of slipped down to this little glue-filled, little nasty guy here.
Okay. So that was laptops. And so keep your questions and get them in the queue. I'm going to start taking some of those soon. We're going to switch to tablets in a second, but maybe we just talk about some of the myths, or really we're trying to make sure it's not just about we want to get the companies design products that are designed for repair. I think there's a lot of out there that the companies really try to confuse the public about is it a good idea to repair? Is it safe?
Right.
Is it so it talks about that. Is it dangerous to be doing this stuff, or is it what's the we want to remove obstacles to repair. What should we be, some of these myths out there that companies use all the time to discourage, put up obstacles, and make you think more, well, it's just easier to buy a new one.
Yeah, there are definitely some scare tactics, I would say, involved in this. And some of that just starts with like the look of the device where, everything is so seamless and it's just this kind of like black box. You have no idea what's inside. You don't even see it as like a mechanical object. You just see it as like a magic stone, and that's it, and that's how it's made. So part of that is through the design, like gluing things shut and making it just look like flawless. But there's always a way in. The repair techs have to have some way to get in, where you've got, if your logic board dies and you're within warranty or you're within Apple Care or something, then they have to get in there. They have to be able to replace it. So a human being made this, so a human being can open it. So don't let people tell you that you're too stupid to get in there, because someone did it. Someone did it well. So repair documentation obviously helps with that. Like if you're going to go in blind, not as easy. But it's really not as scary. There aren't booby traps. Like you're not going to blow it up by taking the screws out of the bottom. Batteries are scary, but you can do tons of other repairs, like putting a new SSD in or putting new RAM in, that would help refresh the device. And manufacturers can make it way easier to take the batteries out, period. So if we've got like stretch release adhesive. I don't know if you guys know like the command strips where you like stick it on the wall and you pull it, and that kind of like makes it unstick from the wall, so you can like hang posters in your dorm room or whatever. They've got the same thing for batteries, that you can just pull that pad and then the battery just lifts off of the case. So it's like, if they say that it's too scary to do and that they're doing it themselves and they have the capability of making it easier, it seems silly that they can just be like, oh yeah, it's too much for you. Like you're too stupid for this. I think that's pretty insulting.
Yep. Okay, so not the best example for companies making design for repair with this laptop.
Right.
So let's take a look at tablets.
Okay.
And I think we actually have one that's did much better in our report this week.
Yeah, surprisingly. So oftentimes, actually, tablets are kind of a throwaway device that not many people expect the tablet to last very long. Like, gosh, if you go onto, Amazon or wherever, you can find like a $25 or $50 tablet, which is really kind of scary.
And which one do we have here?
Oh, this is the Asus ZenPad, I believe S3, S10. So this one did fairly well. Asus is kind of in the business of making a lot of tablets, so maybe they've got it kind of nailed down. I'm just pulling out a couple screws in the bottom here, next to the charging port.
Are these the same? What kind of screws were these?
Those are actually, so that's a standard T3 Torx. A Torx is the one I was telling you about earlier. Pentalobe has 5 lobes and a Torx driver has 6, but it's much better manufactured. So the driver actually sits much more deeply inside the device. So that enables a really good bite of the screwdriver. So you can take this screw in and out as many times as you want, basically. And that's going to...
And what's this gizmo?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just like speeding through this. This is an ice glack. It's basically just 2 suction cups, if you can see. It'll pull one on either side. You can also do this with an ordinary suction cup like we've got here. It just helps you kind of lift without prying so much. So it's kind of got a display that's set into what we call a bathtub, just because it's totally round, and then the lid is kind of the display here.
Okay, so this is,
go ahead and crank
so
this
you,
open.
you have some special tools, but if someone had a suction cup, they could.
Oh, yeah.
It's really about just trying to get some leverage that you can pull straight up.
Yeah, exactly. And then so also there are other tools like that you can use, like even sometimes just packing tape. Like if you put packing tape on it, you can get a good grip to lift up on that. So just kind of get it in the corner there. And then if I've got a prying tool, these are it's just held by clips. There's no adhesive in here. So once I have a little bit of an access point, I can go ahead and lift this out.
And so this was different from my iPad. So there's no screws on my iPad last time I checked. So,
yeah, that's fully glued shut.
Oh, then so it's glued shut.
Yeah, there's glue all the way around the edge, and the display is actually separated. I'm just gonna get a better grip over on this side. The digitizer or the touchscreen glass is separated from the LCD, and there's no frame on it, so it's just bare glass by itself, which unfortunately makes it really fragile when you're trying to get it open. And the problem with the iPad is that anytime you want to replace anything in there, like if your home button stops working, you have to go in through that glass. So that's kind of frustrating for people who are just trying to, replace, one small component.
Right. Battery starts to die and you want to replace.
Yeah, then you have to risk possibly needing a display replacement as well as a battery replacement.
Right.
Which stinks. This one is actually a very well supported display frame. Whoops. Okay.
Okay.
So you'll see
inside.
here. Yep. So this is it. This is SIM tray here, but the rear panel is totally empty, which, like we said before, with the MacBook, it's kind of nice to see everything all in one place and you have immediate access to it. So here we've got a separate charging port, which is great. We like to see modularity, which means that all the pieces are kind of individual. So for example, if your charging port fails, like it starts to get wiggly and you have to get at that really weird angle to charge it, then you're able to take that part out, put it back in, a new one, and it's a much cheaper part than, say, it's attached to the motherboard where the system memory and everything lives. So that modularity is really good. The kind of flat design is really good. The battery is immediately disconnectable, which is kind of the first step for any repair, just so you don't have any stray charge around.
Right.
These cables over the top are kind of annoying because you can't get the battery out before you do that, but that's not too hard of a procedure.
You can put them back in.
Through.
You're not right.
Yeah. These are super easy to get out and back in. And I don't even have to disconnect this one on each edge. I can just disconnect it there. And then if you can see, we've got just screws around the outside. And this battery is actually just mounted into a tray, so there's no adhesive connecting the battery to the item itself. So these are just standard Phillips screws here, so I'll grab that, and we'll just pull out this battery just for funsies. just a few screws.
Okay. And so there's no glue in there, and this is so different. That's what we see with a lot of phones and with tablets in particular. Oh, actually, in the laptop as well, a lot of adhesive. So
yeah, tons of adhesive.
And that's bad because you indicated it makes it really difficult to open, so you're gonna end up breaking something, and as part of just opening the device.
Yeah. Which definitely stinks. So iPads, for example, their batteries are really tough as well. They're definitely glued into the rear case very strongly. Having the battery able to pop out like this is it's pretty rare, I would say, in the tablet world, because, like I said, they're kind of built to be cheap and they're not supposed to last very long. So I think tablets are kind of becoming like one of the biggest e-waste kind of sectors where you get like the cheap tablet because you're like, oh, I mean, it's $50. Like, even if it sucks, then it's not bad. But then you put that in your drawer, or you put it in e-waste, or you just throw it in the trash can, and then that stacks up, and then that device, all the energy that went into manufacturing that is lost. As opposed to something that's repairable or upgradable, then that device can last much longer. So instead of buying 5 laptops, you're buying, or 5 tablets, and you're buying just one. Do we have a question?
All right, we're gonna do some questions in here. We have John asking, should we be worried about if you expose the insides to dust or hand oils? You have to be aware of that. What should be done? Should you be wearing gloves?
There are certain things like, okay, you definitely don't want to expose like your camera to too much dust, but really, unless you're working in like a barn or something, that's pretty unlikely. We do use canned air sometimes for like, for example, Gary's iPad screen here. I was telling him earlier that once he gets the glass out, then there's going to be kind of glass dust throughout, and you do want to like take that outside, blow that out, and make sure that doesn't get around, because that can cause some harm. But for the most part, like hand oils, that'll be important on antennas. But as long as you're not kind of touching too many things, all of the guides on iFixit, for example, will tell you like, okay, handle the boards by the edges. Make sure you do clean this part with like high concentration isopropyl alcohol. We have those tips kind of strewn throughout. ESD is not quite as big a deal as a lot of like Geek Squad and those kinds of people will tell you about. That's electrostatic discharge, by the way, for people.
ESD.
So we do include like, we've got bracelets for that, and you can ground yourself, and that's a very safe way to do it. But I would say that a lot of the you shouldn't do this yourself stuff is less scary, I think, than a lot of people think.
Okay. So we already took the battery out?
Yeah, I thought I would just pop that out just to show that there's no adhesive holding this guy in, which is really cool. Just a totally separate assembly. And then we've just got motherboard after that, and we can pop that in, and he'll be ready to live for another couple years.
Okay. Example of good repair. And so this is tablets. We had some other tablets that did well. We highlighted, it was HP tablets.
Yeah, I believe the HP Elite X2 was a 10 out of 10 on our score sheet. This one, I believe, got an 8 out of 10. But the Elite X2 actually had, I believe, replaceable SSD, which is kind of unheard of in the tablet world. We're like, whoa, what do you mean upgradable storage? That's nuts. In this case, the SSD and the RAM are not upgradable on this, and you only got an 8 out of 10. But yeah, being able to make that device last a little bit longer, hold a little bit more, have the battery replaced, that means you're going to have a much longer life on your tablet.
Okay.
HP actually also includes repair manuals. So as I said before, that's kind of like the hardest part of getting in. So all of their repair manuals are available online, and they do supply replacement parts that you can purchase. So you can put a new battery in or a new SSD.
Okay. So those... we'll highlight this resource at the end, but if you want to look at the scorecards, they're rethink-it.org. Quickly go to those highlights. And so we did laptops, we did tablets. We have a brand new Samsung Galaxy 8 over here.
Oh yeah, brand new. It's already cracked.
It cracked. Right. Seems to be a lot of glass in that phone. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. All right. So here, let me get this out of the way real quick. This one is actually, I think someone called it like the most crackable phone in the world. People have been having a lot of trouble of just like, it's been in my pocket and just it touched something and now it's shattered. It's got glass on the back and on the front as well, and it's kind of this curved display. So there's even glass on the sides. Pretty much like 100% glass, except for this very small.
Yeah, the glass sandwich
bezel
has
around
been the
edge.
word that's been thrown around with this guy.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it looks cool, but it definitely hampers the repairability. And I don't know, like they must have like a heck of a warranty on here, because like, how do you hold this phone? You can't even put it in a case, and then it'll still break. So
Okay, so sounds like high probability of display or possibly even the back cracking. So can you? It's easy to fix. That's the question.
It's kind of awful. It's really hard to get in here. So like a little bit of a disclaimer, this is actually one that we've done teardown on before. So I'm going to take the back off, but it's going to be significantly easier than it was before. The seam allowances are so tight on here because it's luxury and they don't want any, dust or anything getting in there, which is fair, but it's, oh my gosh, it's so hard to get any kind of prying tool in there. We applied a ton of heat. The eye opener is a good use for that. Also, like those like muscle relaxer, like rice bags,
right.
same
Yeah,
concept,
those.
where
Yeah.
you're just applying some kind of diffuse heat. And I'm just gonna cut through the adhesive here. It's actually resettled a little bit, so it's kind of tough.
So right, you're just cutting through the adhesive with that.
Right, yeah. So, okay, the idea of heat is that the heat kind of loosens the adhesive up a little bit. Okay, if you guys have ever had bubblegum ice cream, have you ever had that? Where like they're like little like hard rocks because the gum is frozen. And like generally like bubblegum is really chewy. So once you apply that heat, it definitely loosens up the polymers and kind of makes it stretchier. And then after that, all you need is like a cutting tool or a prying tool to kind of get in that thin gap and pull that open. Okay. This guy actually has a fingerprint cable here that's attached to the phone. Most of the time it pops off when you open the back display, but there is a chance that it might rip. We've just got a really thin cable here plugged in.
Okay, so you got it open now. If you wanted to replace the battery, how the heck do you do that?
Oh, you got to keep going. There's no battery access. So if you can see here, we've got the battery you can see here. You can see the cable. It's right there, but it's trapped underneath this frame. So this is an antenna. This is an NFC antenna, and then we've got another antenna speaker assembly down here. So I guess we'll just start going through that. Trying to get that out. Oh, that's my driver. There we go.
And what about these guys? Same, they use this.
Yeah, so actually,
special
luckily,
screws?
no, these are just Phillips screws.
Okay.
So they're relying on the glass back to kind of keep most people out. Samsung, actually, their techs have an oven that they will put their phones in, and it'll heat it up to a specific temperature, which is probably going to be about the same temperature than you get with the eye opener or with a rice bag or what have you. But that softens up the adhesive enough that they can take it out.
And what about for this guy? Samsung provide repair manuals or repair instructions?
No way.
Like how do you replace your battery sort of information?
No, that's like that's a buy a new one kind of scenario from Samsung. Or if so everyone remembers the Note 7 kind of shenanigans.
We
If
do.
you can imagine being on an airplane and feeling your phone get hot, that's it. Like you're pretty much screwed. There's no real way to get in there and avoid that catastrophe. And if Samsung had been able to simply just ship people new batteries, just, hey, pop out your battery and put in a new one, they would have saved themselves a lot of grief and a lot of e-waste as well.
Right. So we as many of you may know, we have been asking Samsung when they had the recall, because the initial reports they were planning to basically take all these phones back, had 4.3 million phones globally they had made, and we're simply going to dispose of them. We've actually since gotten a commitment out of Samsung because they heard from you, because the companies do listen, that they are going to work to refurbish a number of these phones. Actually, I think they're just initially going to start rolling it out next month in Korea. They're sort of refurbished Note 7s with, they've put new batteries in. So we avoided the disposal of all that material and all the energy that was involved in that. And putting it back out, certainly, as you indicated, if they just designed it right in the first place, it would have been a lot easier to solve. But fortunately, they've at least heard from folks and responded and started to, rather than dispose of them or even recycle them, which is not ideally you want to make
yeah,
sure.
you always lose during recycling.
You always lose, and you lose a lot of material. But they actually agreed to work to refurbish as many as they can, and starting to do that in Korea. So you got to the battery.
Mm-hmm.
So easy sailing from now, right?
I mean, if you want to disconnect it, yes. If you want to go any farther, not so much. So the main problem with this guy is everything is so tight and impacted, and the battery is kind of down in this well, which might work well for like durability and structure and maybe waterproofing, but it's impossible to get it out of there. You can't really get a prying tool down the side, and you don't want to pry against the motherboard at all because you don't want to cause damage there. But really the easiest solution is, like I said, those command strips. They can just poke out the end, and all you have to do is like stretch it out. You can find those in the iPhones. They've just got stretchy adhesive, and no matter what kind of container it's in, you're still able to just pull that tab and pull the battery out. In this case, there's just tons of adhesive lining the back. So again, you have to heat without damaging the display. Be very careful with prying, and you don't want to bend the battery because then that can be dangerous as well. So this is just definitely not meant to be repaired.
So somebody, I have a work phone from Samsung that's probably a Galaxy 2.
Okay.
And what I remember to replacing the battery, you could just take a coin and sort of pop the back off,
Yeah.
and then you could get into it and put a new one in there. So
Yeah. Those were
they
the
certainly
days.
know how to do it before, but
Yeah.
similar to Apple, they seem to have gone to a lot more glue and a lot more difficulty. And
Yeah, which is silly because, like, okay, if you need to have this form factor, then fine. But those adhesive tabs, they take up no space. It's just going to be the same exact shape of adhesive. It's going to have the same tolerances, but you'll have immediately better access to that. So if you can't do the super awesome Fairphone 2, got a 10 out of 10, and they are still doing the peel off the back and then take the battery out. LG also had the pull-out batteries until just recently, and people have just kind of abandoned that, which sucks because these devices are so expensive, and if they only last as long as their batteries, that's
Right.
not a good investment.
so yeah, it talks about the Fairphone 2. We don't have one here right here, but why was that? Why in terms of why was that so repairable?
So the whole concept of the Fairphone 2 was basically like make the best phone possible, make the most like moral, I don't know, fair phone. So beyond just sourcing all of the kind of like conflict materials and the heavy metals and those rare earth metals, just from anywhere they found very specific, like the best, most humane mines, and then beyond that, from like manufacturer onwards, they thought about the consumer and they thought about end of life, and every component in there is meant to be replaced. And there's instructions, and there are tabs, and there are numbered systems inside the phone, so it's really easy. Like you flip this switch and it says unlock, and so you unlock it and then you can take the display off. And they have repair manuals and they've got parts, and that's like a very responsible cradle to grave kind of upgrade. Just you could have that phone for a long stretch of time or give it to the next person instead of recycling it.
Okay, so good design, be easy to access. Battery itself can allow customers can replace the battery themselves. What else? What about the display?
Yeah, so for phones, definitely the kind of like high wear or high risk components are the display and the battery, because you carry this around in your pocket all the time. It's going to get dropped eventually, and even sometimes if you have a case, that's not enough to save the display. But even if you are like the most careful person in the world, your battery is going to run out. There's no argument with that. The chemistry is eventually going to wear down, and unless you're going to carry a battery pack attached to your phone all day, like the battery life is going to wear down, and eventually it will need replacing. So that's kind of the timeline for that device is only as long as the battery is viable. So that one is another like really important part. Other high wear components are the ports. So the charging port is a really big one because you're gonna be charging that every night, and unless you're like perfectly precise, then you're gonna have some looseness eventually, and then you're gonna end up with okay, if I put my phone on a book, and then if I put another book on top of the charging cable, then you'll get the perfect charge. So having a modular port, which is just the jack itself, is very important. Headphone jack also kind of same deal, less wear than the charging port. But those kinds of replacements are very important, the high wear components.
Okay, we have a question here from Chris and a couple others asking similar questions. What's the best way to recycle electronics in the components you take out to make sure they're not causing more pollution, or make sure they're being disposed of responsibly?
Okay, so e-waste is basically, as you're saying, any of the electronics or the electronic components. Things like batteries also will fall into those kinds of important to take care of responsibly. For the most part, I'm not too sure about Europe. I'm assuming it's kind of about the same. But in the US, you usually have to find your local organization that takes care of e-waste. You can also go online. There are some resources where you can find, okay, like where's my nearest recycling center? And for the most part, e-recyclers are going to be certified and they're going to be doing a good job. I don't think that you can say oh, okay, I'm not sure about this guy, I'll look at the Yelp reviews. I think as long as you find a good e-waste group or a good recycler, then you'll be pretty safe. I think some manufacturers, I think Apple, you can turn devices into Apple stores directly. And then places like Best Buy as well usually have good relationships with e-recyclers and stuff like that as well. Is that a fair answer?
That's fair. I think also there are some differences in the certification systems. There's a couple out there in the U.S. You have eStewards, which is certified or it's been designed by Boston Election Network, which has really started to try to avoid the sort of shipping of hazardous waste.
Oh, yeah, that's very
the US.
true. That's true.
And so I think
the
the eStewards, that's the one.
Yeah.
The companies, recyclers that are use eStewards, they are required to make sure they're not exporting waste. We still, I think some of the other certification systems actually still allow that waste to be sent overseas. And
that ends up in places like Accra, Ghana, and in certain e-waste kind of dumps in China as well.
Right.
Where that ends up kind of there's less oversight there for those.
So I think you have a number. There are Apple, for example, you can't take it back. A lot of the electronic stores will take back e-waste in the U.S. and elsewhere, but local governments typically want to segregate this waste stream. But it is a big problem. We really, I think, we're replacing components. Want to make sure we're sending them back and putting them into a closed loop system, so the materials there will be reused. But of course, what we're talking about today is trying to make sure devices we get the most out of them before they start being repurposed or reused.
Yeah, another the reduce part of the cycle I think is also really important. There's a freakish amount of e-waste out there. If you think about it, you go into a grocery store and you've got the singing birthday cards. That's e-waste. That's not recyclable anymore. You have to pull the little noisemaker out, and then you can put the paper in the recycling bin. But I think being very conscious of your consumption is also a very important part of that. And you're going to be stuck with the phone. Any phone is going to be e-waste. But I think there are other kind of smaller, more nefarious ones out there that we don't think about most times.
Great. So we went through 3 device categories. So highlighting, so in the phones, who are the best performers, do we find?
Fairphone is still pretty much at the top. Apple actually does a fairly decent job. I mean, 7 out of 10 isn't anything to cheer about compared to the Fairphone 2's 10 out of 10. But they do a ton of rework on their phones. They do refurbishment and they do reselling. So they've actually kind of got that dialed down where it's fairly modular, fairly easy for their techs to take your phone that you're too afraid or that you've been convinced not to repair. They can do that repair and then they can sell it to the next person. And then they've got double the profit off of you basically, which sucks. But that also means that if you're brave enough to kind of go through with the battery replacement or the screen replacement, and I totally believe in you, you can definitely do it for sure. They've got the pull strips, they've got kind of mostly modular components, and all you need are a couple tools. And I think that's a pretty good pick, especially compared to this guy.
Apple was at least improved for the phones. Here we are, 10 years to the day from the anniversary of the iPhone going on sale.
Yeah.
So where that device, I remember correctly, was square, I think, almost rock bottom.
That was a rough one, definitely a rough one.
So certainly shows they know how to do it. I guess one question we hadn't talked about, make sure we certainly think it's important, but maybe just explain for folks tuning in, why is it important for companies to provide spare parts and the manuals?
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, I can go to Apple Store and for my Apple device to probably get them to do something. But why, from a overall, in terms of trying to get more devices to last longer, why is that important?
Yeah, so I encourage you to find your nearest like Apple store, like not just like an Apple reseller or a Best Buy or whatever, but like an actual Apple store that has the ability to actually do these repairs. For a lot of people in the U.S., like maybe that's okay, but there's like one Apple store in Alaska, and there's a lot of traveling distance if you want to go down 400 miles. We had one guy on our blog. He lived on an island and you could only access it by seaplane, and he was like 20 hours from the nearest Apple store. So like, okay, yeah, you've got a warranty, but that means you have to send this off and pay whatever and spend 6 months waiting for your phone to get back, and that's just not feasible. So outside of the like perfect ecosystem of I can walk down to the Apple store and they can fix it in 20 minutes, that's not really a reality. So that kind of, even if you're inside warranty, sometimes that means that you have to do the repair yourself. And the way to do the repair yourself is going to be like follow the repair manual. Like, why don't they have that repair manual available?
Because as soon as you want to replace your battery, that should be like, you don't have to replace. There's some things that are certainly more complex that you should.
Yeah.
But replacing the battery should hopefully be one thing that you would be able to provide basic information on.
Yeah. And like, so for example, the iPhone 5S, when they started introducing the Touch ID, there's a cable in there. And if you can only open your phone like a certain amount, otherwise if you open it too far, then you rip that cable. And then you don't have Touch ID anymore because it's matched to the logic board. So all of those kind of like secret problems, you're not going to know about that unless you have the documentation, and then you're going to end up hurting your phone. So that's a very important part, is getting around those little cables or finding the exact techniques, and that would help so many people if they have the tools, which the Penelope isn't a super obvious one.
And so there's we've had a number of U.S. states introduce right to repair legislation. I think there's similar things going on in other parts of the world. Talks a bit about that. Why is that important?
Yeah, so that's trying to make information more open sourced. So like if you want to replace the alternator on your car, I guarantee you can go online, you can find some kind of like officially published repair manual. Some manufacturers make it pretty difficult. I think Kia, you have to like sign up for a certain service, and then you have to get in and do that, but that's accepted. That's accepted that you can go and you can down to like windshield wiper fluid, like that's something that runs out. The battery is something that runs out. So in the car world, very acceptable to have an online set of repair manuals and have users be able to replace things themselves. So that should be an obvious thing, and that's what we're trying to push with the right to repair legislation in different states, is make this obvious, make repair manuals and make repair parts available and not punishing to use. Like, that shouldn't be illegal to find repair documentation, use it, fix your phone.
Okay. More information on that on the iFixit.org site. There's some blogs on that. Number of U.S. states. If you're in Massachusetts or New York, the bills are coming up for a vote this year. Hey, let your elected officials know that this is important. You want better access to repair information, the ability. You bought the product, you should have the right to repair it.
Right.
I think New Jersey just the other day just introduced that. So, and other parts of the world see this becoming something recognized that, hey, we're starting to lose control of our ability to repair things we own, and we need to solidify that, lock it in. This is really important. It matters for people's pockets, and it certainly matters for the planet as well. So I think we're almost at the end here, but let's sort of recap resources and what can people do.
Yeah.
So let's start with some what can people do. So we definitely want people listening, if you haven't signed already, please go to the www.rethink-it.org website, sign the petition, indicate which, those brands, if you're one of those 3 brands there, but sign the petition. We're going to use that people power from you indicating that it's important, as we have in the past, to tell the companies in the sector that we want devices that are designed to last and can be repaired and upgraded. So it saves you money and it saves the planet as well. There's a lot of great resources on the iFixit.com and .org website telling people what's going on. particular, I think we actually have some images here from the sort of, you guys have an ongoing list of sort of from each category.
Yeah, so the three categories that we broke down here, laptops, tablets, and smartphones, we've got repairability lists online. So we really encourage people to be conscious of their purchasing decisions and kind of like the whole vote with your dollar idea, that if you're going for getting a new laptop, then you want to know how long that's going to last, and you want to kind of back like the best manufacturer that will have the best repairability. So the laptop repairability list is going to be the way to see which ones are the most repairable and which ones you can actually upgrade. And those all have detailed links to teardowns and blog posts that will kind of walk you through the reasonings behind those scores. And you'll be able to choose like, okay, yeah, I want the repairable laptop, I want the replaceable battery, I want the upgradable RAM. And that's another way to encourage people to the manufacturers to change their designs to say that, okay, this is what the people actually care about, versus just them assuming that, oh, slim is better, those kinds of things. We've also got the tablet repairability list and the smartphone repairability list. And again, those are all sortable by score, and you can look through the manufacturers and whatever phone you're looking at. And then we try and do teardowns the day of the release, basically. So if we don't have anything on that list, you can look at our teardown list and find out the very newest device and see what those scores are getting, and see kind of like what, beyond what the manufacturer is saying about the features and everything, see what the repairability features are as well.
Right. And you guys actually had a graphic that showed sort of by brand how different companies perform. So an additional sort of layer on, so give me a sense of, because certainly some companies, it's not, some companies actually did quite well on some products, but and others quite poorly.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we've got a graphic that kind of stretches out by manufacturer's average score and then the scores of their devices. So you'll see, for example, Microsoft has been doing pretty poorly. They've got 2 1s, I think, on their laptop and their tablet. And then we've got other options like Apple. They've got a very low laptop score, but a fairly high phone score. But that still puts them towards the left edge of the not so great manufacturers because their score has been dragged down by that failure of design, I would say.
Right.
And then manufacturers more towards the right side are in the greener pastures where you'll find HP and Dell and Fairphone and people like that.
Right. Yeah, actually, the Microsoft, you actually wasn't in the scorecard we put out this week, so you guys had just done the teardown.
Oh yeah, that was a really
But for the one of the new laptops, I think we actually have an image of it.
Yeah,
it shows
the Surface laptop.
how difficult it is to open this dang thing.
Right. So we were saying about how it's built to be a monolith or whatever. So like the S8 that has a glass back, at least the MacBook has screws on the back of it. But this Surface laptop was just like a completely sealed fabric nasty cocoon that we actually had to cut open. There was no way to get in besides cutting that open. There was no clips or delamination or anything. It was just like really just take a box cutter.
So that was scored a big fat 0, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so, because there's literally no component that you can replace without damaging something.
All right, we know Microsoft can do better, and so they need to hear from you. Let other companies know. So please sign the petition. Need you to be more informed on this too. Let you vote with your dollars as you're choosing which brands to go buy next time when you had to repair or buy new if you get a device stolen. But ideally, we don't want you to use your device as long as possible. And so there's some great resources that iFixit is providing. So when your phone starts to maybe not quite get through the day like it used to, which generally gets there after so many cycles.
Yeah.
You probably need a new battery, not a new phone. And certainly there's you can do it yourself. There's tools out there online to walk you through that. There's certainly independent repair shops, and often some manufacturers do provide. Apple, for example, they've actually gotten a little bit better about lowering the price of some of their standard repairs, which is good. We want to see more of that and make it more affordable so people don't feel it's just, it's going to cost me $200 to replace this, so I'm going to stuff it in the drawer or put it put it in the e-waste bin at Best Buy and start over. No, most of these devices can last much longer with just a bit more attention replacing batteries and replacing displays are two good examples, but there's often like simple things that go wrong because they got wet or what have you, but these things are totally repairable, or they should be. We've shown some companies are much better than others. Other resources you want to flag before we sign off?
Yeah, basically just iFixit.com. We've got a whole spread. We've got the repair guides, or if you want kind of the more one-on-one touch, we've actually got an answers forum. So if you are concerned about like, well, can I actually do this repair? You can go online and you can say, hey, so like, I think this is wrong. And we've got tons of community members who are super helpful, and they'd definitely be willing to help you either walk you through the process or kind of walk you through the troubleshooting of like, oh, okay, well, like your battery is draining slowly, but I think that maybe, these issues could be addressed before you have to replace the battery if you're afraid of doing that. So the answers forum is definitely a good place and good people power, I would say.
Definitely worked for me when I fixed my laptop, so please check it out. And thanks for joining today. Look forward to hearing more from iFixit later. We'll be working in partnership throughout the year, try to bring more attention to the importance of repair. We'll be continuing to update our analysis of how IT companies are performing. Repair is the focus right now. We'll be coming back in the fall with the relaunch of the Guide to Green Electronics at rethink-it.org or -it.org. And look at a brand level how companies are performing. We have one really important slice here on which companies are designing for repair and which ones need to improve. But they need to hear from you. People power is what motivates these companies. Their customers are really important to them. They want to keep them, and they need to hear from you to let them know that you expect better. Thanks again for having me down. It's been a treat to come to iFixit headquarters. It's been on my list. I'm glad to come down and hope to come back again soon.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.